welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Reagan Kelly, and I am joined by my awesome co-hosts this week,
Laura Nash.
And Reagan's twin brother, Shane Kelly.
And this week we are talking about a game called Gris. At least I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Gris?
Gris? I don't speak French. It is the French or Spanish word for gray. So, people who
French,
speak other languages,
I'm gonna guess
it's French, I think.
Do they do a lot of silent S's? It could be like Gris. Gris.
Sure.
I bet you're right.
I am going to persist in pronouncing it Gris because that is how it looks to me on the page. This game is out on the Nintendo Switch and also on Steam for PC. It took about 3 hours to complete. Does somebody want to give a little bit of a description of what this game is, why we played it?
I would be happy to, yeah. So this is a game that I would say fits pretty neatly into the kind of light platforming genre. It is a game about a young girl with a very cute blue bob haircut who is exploring a world that is populated with things like giant statues and birds.
In the game, the world opens up and it's all gray. And as you keep exploring and you unlock more and more mechanics and more of the world, you also are introducing color back in. And so it starts off gray, like the title, if you speak other languages, and then it starts getting infused with these watercolor washes of more and more colors introduced back in. Your achievements are actually colors. Tiny spoiler.
Very Pleasantville. Yeah, it's a really evocative and kind of beautiful visual game that comes across with, pretty much no danger or combat. It's entirely, a visual experience. I don't think there's any words in the game. So it's a game that I think almost anyone with an appreciation for kind of light platforming and beautiful art will enjoy.
Yeah, the developer description, I don't love it, but there's a few things in it that I think are...
hate the developer description. Don't let it fool you guys.
Yeah, okay, maybe you want to take it, Laura. What about the developer description didn't work for you?
I think the developer description does an excellent job in making me not want to play this game. It opens up with it not only shows, not tells, but it also, to me, starts off with something that is not the point of the game.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and read it here, and then we can discuss. So, the developer description: Gris is a hopeful young girl lost in her own world, dealing with a painful experience in her life. Her journey through sorrow is manifested in her dress, which grants new abilities to better navigate her faded reality.
Stop. Just don't poison our listeners anymore.
Yeah, I don't think it really captures what this game is. First of all...
so her name is Gris?
Yeah, apparently.
It doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. A lot of this doesn't matter. A lot of this doesn't really connect with what I sort of experienced the game as here. Dealing with her own painful experience in her life. Her journey is through sorrow is manifested in her dress. It's all basically saying that this is a game where you're going to be doing some light platforming and some very light puzzle solving. But the main thrust here is to experience a artistic, aesthetic, emotional journey.
Its second paragraph does a much better job in my mind. Calls it a serene and evocative experience, free of danger, frustration, or death. Meticulously designed world, delicate art. All of those things are true. Just for the love of God, just skip that first paragraph. It's garbage.
Yeah. They're not doing a great job of kind of putting their actual strength forward here, which is that it is a gorgeous game. It is one of the most artistically and just from an animation standpoint, artistically accomplished 2D platformers I've ever seen. It's got some incredibly attractive art, looks good in screenshots, looks even better in motion when you see some of these things like the dress ruffling in the wind or the motion of some of the enemies that are these sort of smoky, spirally, swirly clouds of stuff.
These animators know how to swirl. They know how to make swirls and squiggles.
They can just illuminate the world with some colored tints. They can swirl. They can float beautifully. And that's ultimately my thing about this game is I loved living in the beauty of the world. So it was funny. I was looking at other people's reviews of the game, and it's one of the few things that I've loved that I agree with almost all of the critics who hated it. So I wanted to talk about it because I am a sucker for beautiful animation. And I was kind of curious, you know, the game is trying, based on this description, to have us have this really intense moving experience. I didn't have any of that, and I don't care. To me, it's okay that it's kind of empty because it's a beautiful experience. And is that enough for a game?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I came away from it with too, Laura, which is that like it's an artistically really good experience that's also kind of emotionally neutral for me. Like I kind of went into this expecting, I mean, just based on their description and the way the game is marketed, I was kind of expecting this to be a personal story with some idea of like what the actual struggles this character is going through. I was expecting it to be like dialogue light, but I was expecting a little bit more in terms of an emotional story that's conveyed through something other than mere aesthetics. Now, mere aesthetics is undercutting the aesthetics. They're great aesthetics, but it is a game carried entirely on its aesthetics. There's almost nothing that I would consider gameplay in this, which I think is debatable. But like it's light platforming to the point that it's extremely linear. The puzzles are almost not puzzles. And most of the
and this is from Reagan, who is famous for not being good at puzzles.
Yeah.
Did you get stuck on any of these puzzles, Reagan?
Well, actually, there are a couple places I got stuck, but they were not on the puzzles. So there's something to talk about there in a little bit. But I think, Laura, your question there of like, is it enough to have a game that is visually arresting, but doesn't have that sort of emotional, doesn't involve you on an emotional level? Particularly in a game where it also doesn't have gameplay hooks to keep you involved either.
I'll say that it didn't involve me on a narrative level. It did involve me on an emotional level because this was incredibly relaxing. The world was so lush and beautiful and calming. Full disclosure, played this hungover on January 1st in the afternoon.
Ooh.
Woke up in the afternoon, played this game, really loved it. I played it before the Game of the Year discussion in the morning. And I think that it was, if you were in the place where you can sit and absorb something else and don't really want to, you want a beautiful, almost passive experience, like this was perfect because I could do just enough interaction. I could move around. Everything was delightful to me. I was in the right place for it. They say serene experience, and I think that's right on. So, but I did not have any connection to the 7 stages of grief, which is what it's supposed to be structured on. To me, it was much more moving to
Oh
be
my
like,
God, why did I get that? You're right. Of course,
I didn't realize
the 7
that at all.
stages. Oh my God, you're
Yep.
oh.
So it's extremely
It really
subtle,
doesn't give you a lot to like.
except if you manage to get a hidden achievement where you find some hidden statues and you get an achievement that's literally called the 5th stage of grief depression. And I was like, oh, the achievement was like, did you realize the theme? So yeah, that's technically what it is. But really, it's every stage unlocks a color, and you go through. They match a mechanic. Like at one point, you can turn your dress into a block and you pound down on the ground, and then you unlock red, the color of anger. So if you like color theory, that's all you need. It doesn't necessarily tattoo across the sky. You're now angry. It's just like you're doing kind of breaking stuff and the theme is red. You don't really need to go deeper than that. I think if I was talking to the developer, they would probably be very upset with me for not getting their game, but I still loved it because to me, it's just color theory, the game.
Yeah.
I loved that.
And the way, the colors of the game, one of the wonderful things about the way that color is used in this game is it's not just like, I said Pleasantville kind of flippantly at the start because, it is kind of a trope to
it is Pleasantville.
have like color coming back into the world or whatever. I'm pretty sure we've seen that a few places, but the way that the color is used is has to do with the way that this game is kind of visually composited on the screen. Like, it's not just that color appears in the world. Color like flows and floods into the world in an animated, like liquid form that is, it's if you were to like saturate a piece of paper and then wash it with watercolor paint, like the way that the paint like swirls and spreads and saturates the page, like that effect is used ubiquitously and repeatedly in this game. And it's not just that. Every surface in the game, every area is alive with movement. So it is in a gameplay sense, I found the world of the game to be very minimally interactive. But in a visual sense, it was every inch of it was alive, and that was really what keeps you going in this game. Like the absolute beauty of these sort of simple layouts and levels.
Yeah, during the game, the best moments in the game were, for me, just moving forward and experiencing new art. Every screen was different. Every screen had new, beautiful art to see and to sort of jump around through.
With a lot of copied and pasted generic temple shit.
Well, sure, but like even that was really varied. I thought it looked really cool. It's kind of weird to say that like the best moments in this game were the like hold right and press the jump button kind of semi-mindlessly while just sort of taking it all in kind of stuff. But that's sort of where the game worked for me. It was like I just want to walk through this beautiful world. I'm totally all about like left to right the game if it looks this good. Where things didn't work as well for me were where it got a little more frustrating than that.
The other piece, in addition to the watercolor look, that I want to shout out is the line work, which are the borders around objects, the way that they are really just drawing borders around things. The line work is extremely delicate and small. It is probably one of the only times I've seen that style in a game. Usually you get something that's a lot more clunkier, a lot thicker lines, a lot bolder look. This is so delicate.
It really is.
A reviewer, Alice Bell, said it is such lines that look like it could blow away. Like you get the lightness of the animation and the dress, you get all this lightness because everything is, the colors aren't saturated. They're semi-transparent. You see white through it. You see texture through it. The lines are incredibly thin. It just gives this such a lightness and delicate touch that to me felt much more like a movie than anything I've ever seen in a game. And I've done animation for games, and the reason no one does that is because it's so much harder.
Yeah.
It is so much harder to make those lines thin because every mistake shows. So I can't even imagine how much time that kind of stuff took.
I agree. I will pass along a piece of advice that Laura gave me, which I'm glad she gave me when we were getting started, which is don't play this game on handheld mode on the Switch.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
You'll start to lose a lot of that detail. I played a couple of chunks of this game as I was I just wanted to check it out, see how it looked in handheld mode because she said that, and you really do lose it. And it comes back to something about the style of this game. The game that we've played before for this show that I would most compare this game to was Abzu. And similar to Abzu, visually, this game plays a lot with scale. There are lots of times where the view pulls dramatically back and your character becomes a tiny portion of the screen. For example, she might be cradled in the hand of an enormous statue, or she might be climbing an enormous staircase. And to get that scale, the camera pulls so far back that in handheld mode, you basically can't see her. So I was kind of reminded a couple of times of one of my favorite moments in video games, which is where you meet the whale in Abzu, and you just sort of get this incredible sense of scale for your character. So
Abzu is a really good point of comparison. I think that like this belongs to the sort of loose genre of aesthetic platformers that would encompass things like Far Lone Sails that we talked about earlier this year, or things like like Inside or Limbo, or there's quite a lot of them, and they're sort of a genre that we find ourselves covering a lot on this show because they tend to be something that fits in our timeline.
It steals a bit of that going to a new place and seeing the wonder of Fez, even though it is a completely different style.
Where I think it doesn't quite line up with those other games that I was mentioning. Things like, Far Lone Sails is actually the thing that I was thinking about at the time, because Far Lone Sails is also a game where you don't have a whole lot of context on the world. It is mostly a sort of, the platforming at least of it is mostly very low challenge, sort of left to right. It's not really about a challenge. It's about a journey. It's about experiencing art. It's about experiencing, an emotional experience.
This is not a Far Lone Sails cast, but I disagree on that. But okay. We'll continue.
Well, what I'm saying there is that like Far Lone Sails and Inside and Limbo and those games, they have that, but they also have something very unique about them that sets them apart. And I don't know if I feel like aesthetics, which is the thing that sets this game apart, is enough to elevate that experience for me. While I was in the process of playing this game, I was enjoying the art, but I was constantly feeling like, well, surely the twist or its unique expression of its mechanics or something must be right around the corner. But it was, in terms of its actual mechanics, it stuck very close to, it was some very, very basic stuff. It did not surprise me with its mechanics ever.
Reagan, what I think I'm hearing you say is that the mechanics of the game were a little bit too basic, and I just want to get into, and that may be right for some people, that may be right, not be right for others, but I do want to get into what I kind of see as the place where this game really just sort of went with the easiest possible thing, and that is orbs. I am done with orbs in video games.
It's keys. It's unlocking stuff.
Yeah. So in any video game, like this one, you put a player into a space, and okay, how do we make sure that this player experiences our artistic space? To the extent that we, the developers, want them to. Well, let's ensure that they go to all 5 corners. How do we ensure that they go to all 5 corners? Well, let's put 5 glowing orbs for them to collect. Sure. Orbs have a tremendous history in video games. If you go back to Pac-Man, he was trapped in a maze full of orbs. The platformers up through the 90s when I was playing games as a kid are all collectathons where like 90% of what you're getting is orbs. So maybe I'm just a little bit done with grabbing hundreds of orbs. But the structure of this game...
8.
Yeah. Every new spot I would get into... I would, wander around and I'd be like, oh, wow, yeah, man, look at that beautiful tower, man. Oh, I can swim now. Look, there's like there's fish. They're so gorgeous. Oh, there's the orb box. Oh, there's going to be like 10 orbs here. Okay. All right. Start clockwise. Let's go. All right. Here's the job.
Yeah, to me, honestly, they didn't need to encourage me to explore the spaces, because every time I landed somewhere, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go all the way to the right and then all the way to the left and just try to go see everything because I liked the world. They didn't need to make me collect orbs for me to like the world. But I was like, they got to do some gating process, I guess.
I think there's sort of 2 actual failures with regards to the orbs, not just in this game, but like, I don't know. Shane,
the concept of
orbs. And, orbs don't have to be spheres. Orbs can be a lot of things. But
that's the thing. Orbs aren't a concept. They're just a counter.
They are the most semantically null choice that they could possibly have made in this game. Like, they could have made the orbs anything else. So there's 2 failures here. There's a mechanical failure and also an aesthetic failure. And just from the aesthetic standpoint, this game has great aesthetics, but like, couldn't it have picked something more interesting than orbs, than glowing spiritual orbs? I mean, I know that, last year orbs had a hot year with like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, right? But like, that doesn't mean that orbs are back. That was an exception. And like, orbs are still old and tired. Like, aesthetically, bad choice on the orbs. They could have done something more interesting. But then also mechanically, orbs are a failure to design something better than that. Like,
were they supposed to be stars?
I mean, yeah, I guess they were stars.
But they're basically orbs, yeah.
They're floating mystical orbs that are stars.
I understand. I'm just trying to like figure out the origin of the bad decision. Is they were probably like, oh, you'll collect stars, and it sounds so magical, but visually they're just balls of light, which are
they're
orbs
power
in
pellets.
every they might as well be coins. I completely feel you on that.
A coin is just a flat orb. You heard it here first.
Time is a flat orb.
If you're making a video game and you're thinking about putting in orbs,
Get help.
think about any of the other art assets that you happen to have lying around and just use that.
Flowers.
Strawberries.
You know what?
Strawberries.
Strawberries, like it. I don't want to compare this game to Celeste because they're very different, but like, yeah, like strawberries. Hell, why not? Like, oh, fuck orbs.
I think we can chill on orbs. I think we pretty much orb shamed this game to death.
We've done our type 5 on orbs. You're right.
And
Yeah.
orbs are actually not a huge part. I mean, yeah, it's the gating mechanic, but they're not that important to the game. To
That's
be
true.
honest.
They are.
That's true.
Laura, you're insane. They are the central mechanic of this game. If this game has a mechanic, it is collecting orbs. They are central to this game.
I think if you talk to 15 people and we're like, what is the point of this game? They'd be like, it is to kind of walking around and enjoy I don't think anyone would be like, but
It's an orb collecting
It's
game.
like saying
it's
the
not.
point of a game is to get the key. Like, it's not the point of the game.
Yeah. No, the point of the game is to get past the door, not to get the key. Yes.
Well, what you're describing is a massive mechanical failure of the game because the only mechanic that this game has is orbs, and it's
I
not
think we're
central
probably
to the
that's
game.
not true.
That's
We're
not
blowing
true.
that
I
way
think
out of
mechanics
proportion.
are-
It also
that
sorry.
is saying the fetch quest is the ultimate outcome. I don't think that's the main mechanic of the game because honestly, it's a lot of the exploration. It is that you get like little mini powers that are basically like unlocks or weights or things like that.
You
Your
are
dress
correct.
transforms. Like
Yeah, you turn your dress into different shapes.
Yes,
you turn your
yes,
dress
yes.
into different shapes to explore the environment. And by exploring the environment, you're rewarded with orbs that make you explore more environments. I think the orbs are a really banal choice for a game that's super creative. But I don't
So
think
Laura,
they're the
we've
be-all,
decided
end-all
then
of
it's
the
a
game.
Metroidvania.
God.
The simplest possible. There's no backtracking, really.
Yeah,
Well, you
it doesn't even allow. I was actually, frankly, kind of expecting backtracking in this game, but it doesn't even allow it. You can't go back to replay previous levels, for example, without going back to the like stage select screen.
Well, because you transform the world.
No, that would have been an easy way to get more frustrated. Yeah.
Would have been an easy way to get more orbs.
You could. It's basically you transform the world, and it's inherently different. I think you're actually revisiting some of the places you've been before, but now that you have blue, you have water, or
That's
like now that you have
true,
green,
yeah.
you have plants. So it feels like a completely different environment, even though you're probably on the same level with another layer turned on.
Listeners, if you have thoughts on this, tweet at us #orbpinions.
we want to hear
Yeah,
from
orbs
you.
are the MacGuffin of this game, and it's tired, but it's still MacGuffin.
You know, okay, apart from the orbs, I do have one other thing that I kind of want to talk about in terms of like where I ran into trouble with this game. Because like you, Laura, I thought it was visually gorgeous. And given that it's only 3 hours, like I sat through a lot less involving things for 3 hours. Like I was very involved in experiencing the art that this game wanted to show me. And 3 hours is exactly the right length of time for that to take. There were very, very few places where I found myself getting frustrated or having difficulty with the game. It is, from a mechanical standpoint, fairly easy. There's no enemies really to speak of. There's no death exactly. There's a couple of places where you can potentially die, but it's very rare.
You can't die.
No, you can. I'm pretty sure that I got killed by one of the eel thing, at least once.
You can't. You're not. Yeah, this game is actually it's like on everything that you cannot die.
I think what it did then was it kind of reset
can
my position or something like that. Maybe I didn't die,
Interesting.
but I got caught up on some geometry at one point.
I
and
didn't even know you could do that. I think you might have crashed. I don't know.
No, I was overtaken by the eel, and
Oh, okay.
I don't remember exactly what it did, but I interpreted it as a death. I think maybe it just sort of reset the moment or something. But I mean, what's the difference there? Anyway, long story short, there's very few opportunities to be truly frustrated in this game, and that's part of its design. This is a game about showing you, taking you on a artistic journey. It's not about challenging you at every turn. So there's very few places where you're going to find yourself challenged by the game. Exactly, that's not really the point. But what that did mean for me was that the places where I did find myself having difficulty with the game didn't feel like part of the game. They felt like issues in the design more than like a challenge I was supposed to overcome. And so that led to me feeling actually pretty frustrated with them, just from a like perspective of like, well, this shouldn't be like this. What is this game doing? So a couple of things that were kind of roadblocks to the artistic enjoyment of the game for me. One is that the game has really beautiful art that is on a sort of a 3-plane kind of design. It's got, the main plane that your character is on and platforms that you can jump on. And then it also has background and foreground layers. It does some parallax to kind of indicate what's on which layer, but actually not as much parallax as you would expect with something like this. And there is a lot of situations in the game, like a whole lot, almost constant, almost every screen. There's going to be some objects where you really have to look at it and try to tell whether it's a foreground or background element or something that you can interact with by jumping on. I found a lot of times where I tried to jump on top of something and fell straight through it because it was actually background art or foreground. And I got kind of frustrated with that a few times. Like there were a few times where I was, okay, I think I can make this jump. And it's like, oh, nope, you were just jumping into nowhere. And now you've just jumped off of a tall tower. You have to climb that tower again, that kind of thing. And then there was also a lot of times in the game where it just wasn't clear how you were supposed to progress. I'm in an area, there's 8 orbs, presumably, that I've got to collect. Where is the last orb? And I feel like some of these spaces are quite large. I feel like I've explored the whole space. Obviously, I've missed an orb somewhere. Most of the game is fairly linear, but there's these moments where it opens up and you have a whole area to explore in a sort of a non-linear fashion, or at least sort of like explore this area at your leisure until you've collected enough orbs to turn those orbs into a little bridge that you can cross, that kind of thing. And there were a few times in this game where I had like 5 out of 6 orbs, for example, and just hunted over the same area back and forth, top to bottom, 3 or 4 times. And when I got into those moments, I actually found myself getting pretty frustrated with the game. They didn't last long, and in a game that was more sort of oriented around challenging you, I think these would have barely counted as a challenge. They were not incredibly difficult moments or anything. But in a game where I was expecting 0 challenge and a purely aesthetic experience, those moments felt like failures of design. Like they felt really frustrating by comparison, and I didn't love them. So those were kind of actually a big roadblock for me. I don't know if you guys experienced anything like that.
I
absolutely did, yeah.
But I can see that happening. I think I also have a really bad TV, so I generally don't have the problems of, honestly, like the background wasn't super crisp on my TV, so I didn't have the problems you did. To me, the foreground was a really nice, just extra animation when it would kind of, like a black tree would go across and you'd see a little animal skimper behind it. Like that was just kind of a nice extra moment. I didn't have foreground, the playable ground and background problems I've had nearly to say like Bacchanarium, but I can see that if that was again, I cannot overstate how bad my TV
might
is,
just be my eyes, or it also might be just my expectations. That when I see a big black thing that arches up out of the ground, I think, oh, I can climb that thing. But no, I
tend to have the opposite problems where I assume a lot of things are background that are actually interactable. So like I think it's just expectations of I've been burned. I've been burned too many times, so I tend to think that things aren't interactable unless I see something I can't reach, and I'm like, oh, that probably is a branch I can jump on. I tend to maybe think less of the playable backgrounds. Like, I think it's just playing style, and I completely understand how you would get that. To me, when I would be frustrated is I'd be going on my merry way, and then sometimes a cutscene would start, and the way they trigger it is they put these black bars on the screen, and they go to a widescreen aspect ratio. Fans of Westworld know what I'm talking about. But I'm not a fan of Westworld, but I still watched all of it. But it moved down, and then suddenly you're in a cutscene, and I would get kind of sad because I would sometimes think I was the beginning of cutscenes still feels like gameplay, so I would still be trying to do stuff, and then you move in and out. To me, that was the main time when I wasn't sure what they were doing from an interaction design standpoint. But I completely understand how you would have those problems.
My issues weren't with the kind of spotting where I could land and things like that. That was actually quite clear to me. But I definitely had the experience of having to backtrack and retrace my steps to kind of re-explore a lot of these areas. This is a game where you are floating through it, enjoying the environment and things like that. And that does lend itself to getting a little bit lost, which I guess is, maybe part of the intent. But I was ready to move on and get from the blue spot to the green spot or whatever. And I had to be very intentional about, okay, so I'm going to start here at the bottom. Now I'm going to work my way clockwise up and around and over. And wait, I'm back where I started. Where is that last dot? What did I miss? So that's the kind of experience that I ran into a few times. And it definitely kind of pulled me a little bit out. Those were the kinds of times where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just put this down for now. I'll come back to this later.
I would have loved it if the gate was only the way I would change it is I would make it so you only require 3, but they show that there's 10 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I would make the requirement very low. So if you were ready to move on, you could. But if you wanted to continue collecting, you knew there were 10 available. It's something they do in a ton of casual games. Like that would be my change.
I if I were to change it, I would change the like you have X number of dots board that they tend to put at the center of these big areas. When I was retracing my steps, probably the first time I had to really get smart about it, I went back to that board and I thought, oh, well, I've got the 3 that are in the upper right. So that means I must have to go down to the lower left where I don't have the dots. No, it doesn't work like that. They just fill in from the upper right on the dot board.
It doesn't match the geography. Yeah,
exactly.
That would also.
That was a mistake I made that led to me retracing my steps wrong. So I would just make it work the way that I thought it worked, which I think would make more sense.
So my big question of the game is, for me, I was able to put up with a lot of less deep content because I was so enjoying the art style, the animation, and living in this world and the interactivity of exploring it. I know that's not the same for everybody, but to me, kind of the big gap of this is some people really felt narratively moved and felt like this, what I interpreted as a color story was about grief, about the stages of grief. So I'm not sure, which, as you guys heard at the beginning, you guys didn't get. So clearly, if the narrative was supposed to be the point of this game, it failed. To me, it's enough without it. But I'm curious about how that happened for everybody.
Yeah, honestly, the only way that I knew this game was supposed to be about someone dealing with a painful experience in her life is because that was in the first sentence of the description of the game on the store page. I did not, I didn't feel like I connected with the character in a narrative level at all. And I mean, apart from the painful experience being like, oh, I was singing and then I'm not able to sing anymore. I guess that's the painful experience. Obviously, this is metaphorical. This is trying to tell a story about grief through a sort of a metaphorical lens.
Loss.
Or loss, yes.
Yeah, to me, it's actually about loss and it thinks it's about grief, but
yes,
I don't know.
Exactly. Actually, yeah, absolutely. But like what I kept expecting to be able to be given some sorts of hints so that I could infer something more about the story other than this is a purely metaphorical or allegorical exploration of loss or grief. I kept expecting to get some hints about like a larger world outside of the game or hints about the personality of the main character that would give me something more to latch onto. Because I am 100% there for metaphorical or allegorical storytelling. But I guess I was just really looking for something more to latch onto there. I was completely unable to infer anything about the story based on what they gave us.
This is the game equivalent of reading the Chronicles of Narnia books when you're a kid and you think it's about fantasy stuff, and then you read it as an adult and you're like, these books are so obviously about Jesus. How did I miss this? Because once you read someone saying this is a metaphor for grief and you just think back to the game, you're like, oh yeah, it's incredibly obvious. Like everything,
Yeah.
like when you put you for that lens, you're like, yeah, all the statues are kind of grieving. There's like the colors are in the right order. Like it's actually like literally like her grief manifests her and knocks her down at one point. Like it becomes really obvious once you know what it's about. But to me, I think the game is better when you don't know what it's about, because I didn't want to play a downer game.
I can see that.
So maybe that's why I liked it so much, because I didn't really want to go on an exploration of grief. And so I didn't.
And the game let you do
Which
that,
is
which
weird.
is great.
Like,
You're right. Yeah.
I like the game more because I played it not as the developer intended.
That's interesting because like you're right. It doesn't require that you feel the grief of the main character or anything like that, and it's not like beating you over the head with like, and it turns out she had a son that died or something like that. It's like it doesn't beat you over the head with that stuff. It's but it also doesn't. If that is what you're looking for, it doesn't give you anything to hook onto. So like if you're there for a narrative experience of grief, there is almost nothing of that here. This is purely like an aesthetic experience of grief, which is a really interesting thing. I don't know. Like I wasn't expecting it to be that. And I was continually looking out for something to latch on to that I never found.
Reagan, you compared it to Journey. And I mean, in so much as Journey has a story, it's about, going from it's a metaphorical story in that your character's arc is one of moving from like heaviness to weightlessness, which is a very useful metaphor for all sorts of things. And here I guess it's the same.
If you read an academic article on the hero's journey, so much the better.
Yeah,
sure. So yeah, I mean to me it works as a character arc, even though it's not really a narrative one. We have this sense of becoming free from something because we're gaining more and more freedom of movement and more kind of freedom to act and explore. So I mean, that part definitely does work on that level, and it's it's fine.
yeah, no, that's a good comparison too, because like Journey has equally, essentially meaninless narrative. It's exclusively an aesthetic. It's got a little bit more going on mechanically, I think, I would argue, but it's definitely got that same sort of vibe. And I loved that game. I felt differently about this one. I don't know why.
Maybe you need a friend to play it.
Yeah, actually that's a huge part of it. Like the discovery in Journey, spoilers for Journey, skip ahead 30 seconds. The experience in Journey of realizing that you were being joined by other actual human people made that like the theme of it tied the theme of like going from heavy to light and the theme of like coming together with other people together, and actually made that feel like I was connecting with something on a personal level. Whereas this game never quite did that for me.
Yeah, one of the reasons I was really excited to have other people play it is the reviews for this game are all over the map because you simultaneously have. I mean, Rock Paper Shotgun alone had 3 different people review it at different stages. One person loved it, one person hated it, and the other person thought that the problem wasn't that it was too abstract. She thought it was extremely obvious, and she really liked it. So literally the same publication had 3 opposite viewpoints. Other people have written about how this was a huge thing for helping them deal with grief. People are also saying, what are you talking about? It has nothing to do with grief. They have.
What's that quote from the creator of? I'm sorry, that quote from the creator of Celeste comes to mind for that. If this game helped you, then it was you that helped yourself.
Yes,
there was no magic feather.
It feels very much like there's a bunch of this feels like it happens in movies all the time, where you see a movie and everyone has a different interpretation of what happened. that doesn't happen in games that often. For what it's worth, we have this. It's not trying to be a mystery. They just made it so obvious or not explicit that we don't really know what happened.
Yeah, I think other mediums are more used to leaving things up to interpretation and are sometimes more willing to let something work for some people and not others, or have some people get it and not others. Like, games don't do that often, so that is something to be commended. Even if I'm one of the people that maybe it didn't work for exactly, like I can respect that as a philosophy behind creating this very personal piece of work. So that's cool.
It's Schrodinger's video game. I guess in a world of good and bad endings, this game just kind of is content to let you get what you get out of it.
Yeah, I think so. And I would suggest people play this game. Like, I think it's a beautiful aesthetic experience. It's 3 hours, which is not much. You can play this in a single sitting.
I would encourage as much of it, at least play through a color at a time.
Yeah, I wouldn't back out halfway through a color, because otherwise you'll probably have to start over that whole section. And even if you don't, you probably would be a little lost. But I think I played it through all in 2 sittings. So and that was good. If I could have played it through in 1, I think that would have been even better if I had time.
So I picked this as my kind of not in our top 5 game of the year, but my thing that I think I liked more than other people, because I really like living in this world. And I think that if you've listened this far, if you're the person this game is for, to be honest. I watch a trailer, and if that seems like your jam, it probably is. Just don't expect to be breaking down in tears at any time in the game. And I think you'll have a good time with it.
Yeah, and don't expect a deeply mechanical experience either. I don't think there's any indication from the description or anything like that that's what you'd be in for here. But if you were thinking this was going to be a Celeste-style game of combining theme with mechanics, it is not that. It is combining theme and aesthetics. Mechanics are a distant third.
I posted the trailer, and multiple people asked me if I would like to go to the movies to see it with them. It's a game. Like, that's how little interaction there can be in this game. When the trailer made people think it was an anime that I was asking people to go see. So take that for what it is.
I think this podcast, even covering Gris, may be all for naught, because I think that if I'm wrong, you can contact me with hashtag you're wrong. But I think our listeners are, for the most part, people who play a lot of games and are into games. And this is not the kind of game I would recommend to those people. This is a game I wouldn't recommend to more the gamer set. I would say if you're maybe an artist, or if you are someone who enjoyed games as a kid, but also just loves the beauty of painting, or needs a chill few minutes while you wait for a train, that this is maybe the game for those people.
Yeah,
and I'm glad that this
I was going to say, Shane, I'm not sure. Go ahead, Laura.
Really?
I think,
okay.
Well, no, I think that, yes, if you
so I said
something more...
hashtag I disagree with Shane. That's the hashtag. So you can hit me
that's
up on
also
Twitter.
the hashtag. No, I just disagree that people who play a lot of games wouldn't like this. I think that it is much more like, if you're going in expecting a full-fledged platformer, that's not going to be your thing, but it is more like a Florence in that the mechanics are very light, and a lot of what is delightful will be surrounding what you're doing mechanically, not the mechanics themselves.
I think if you liked Florence, this is actually probably a really good pitch for this game. I did like Florence probably a little more than I liked this, because I think the narrative was something I was more able to easily connect with. But if you did like Florence, I think this is probably something that you should at the very least take a look at, because it's similarly like a chill, mechanics light aesthetic experience of Florence is even a little shorter than this, but like similarly short length. I think to kind of contradict something that you said, Shane, I think our audience for this show loves games like this, loves games that may not necessarily appeal to the gamer demographic, so to speak. I hate that word, and etc. But that are, artistic experiences presented as games. I think that's something that the short game audience is totally all about. We've covered a lot of stuff that falls into that category.
And if not, we also do other games. So
Yes.
something for everybody except me, who doesn't play shooters. You can yell at me all you want.
When is the last time we did a shooter on this show? It's been a while.
Super hot.
I agitated for Titanfall 2. All of us played it, and then you never scheduled us to record on it.
Hey, I'm not the only one who schedules these episodes, Shane. If you want to do an episode on Titanfall 2, I will show up. I'm just not gonna wrangle it because I did not like that game.
It's been forever now. You've forgotten everything you played.
I haven't forgotten how salty I was about the factory level that everyone seemed to love, and I did not. Anyway, that's a whole different thing to talk about another time. So I am so glad you made me play this, Laura. Or rather, actually, you didn't make me play this. I downloaded this game myself, dang it. I'm so glad that you suggested this, Laura. And I really thought it was this is very the short game type of game, and I hope our listeners will check it out. It is on the Nintendo Switch. I think it costs $15. Is that right? I think it was some sort of a launch sale or something. Anyway,
It was down to 10 for launch, but I think it went up to 15. Yeah, something
so
like that.
It's on Steam as well for PC. I don't believe there's a Mac port, and it wouldn't surprise me if this gets ported to a few other things as well. But I wouldn't necessarily wait on that. I'd say if this sounds interesting to you, now's the time to check it out.
Before we outro, I just want Reagan to know that the factory level from Titanfall 2 really set the high bar for level design in a first-person shooter. The fight with Ash, Cooper, and BT was really cool. I thought that the way that the level warped and changed around you as the building was being assembled, it was like being in a crazy fun house. So I think that's the last we'll ever hear about Titanfall 2 on this show because we'll never record about it.
Oh, well,
I feel like if I play it and like it, then we should be like, Laura tries a shooter. I make it sound like I'm a child. I have played shooters in the past. They're just not my
of course you
preferred
have.
thing.
Yeah, but yeah, maybe someday. Laura, find a shooter that you want to play, and I am totally down to give it a shot. So thank you, listeners, for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. I am Reagan Kelly. You can find me on the internet at ReaganK on Twitter. And of course, you can find our show on the web at www.theshortgame.net, where you'll find a contact form. That's an easy way to let us know what you think is interesting. Let us know what cool short games are on your radar for 2019. We're still sort of building out our calendar, so very much interested to hear what you have to say about that. You can also reach us on Twitter at _shortgame, where you can hashtag Shane is wrong about Titanfall, and we'll be happy to tabulate those. And Laura, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Laura J. Nash, not yelling about Shane in any of my hashtags, because I love Shane and his opinions.
And Shane, where can people find you?
You can find me being right on the internet at 8-Bit Shane.
And thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.